The north is cold and full of whispers.
The hunting party departed Winterfell through the Hunter's Gate at dawn. Catelyn Stark stood in the yard watching them go, King Robert Baratheon at the center, loud and already drinking from a wineskin though the sun had barely risen. Ned rode beside him, their horses close together the way they always were, two men who had been boys together at the Eyrie. Behind them came Robb, Theon Greyjoy, Jory Cassell, and perhaps 50 men total, all armed for boar. The king had been at Winterfell for 6 days, 6 days of feasting and drinking, and Robert's booming laughter echoing through halls that had been quiet for years. 6 days of Cersei Lannister's cold beauty and colder courtesy. 6 days of watching the royal children, golden-haired, green-eyed, looking nothing like Robert Baratheon. And 5 nights ago, the letter had arrived. Catelyn's hand went unconsciously to the pocket of her dress, where she had tucked the memory of it, though the letter itself had been burned as Lysa instructed. The message had been written in the secret language she and her sister had invented as girls at River Run, a cipher of substituted letters and childhood references no one else could read. The Lannisters killed Jon Arryn, the Queen and the Kingslayer. They tried to kill me and my sweet little Robert. You must protect yourself and your children. Tell no one. Burn this letter. Catelyn had burned it, but the words remained seared into her mind with the permanence of a brand. The Lannisters murdered the Hand of the King, the Queen, Robert's own wife, and her twin brother Jaime, the Kingslayer who had stabbed the Mad King in the back and now wore a white cloak as if oath-breaking could be absolved by time. She had told Ned, of course. They had argued about it in whispers in their bedchamber, the hottest room in Winterfell, built over the hot springs that kept the castle warm even in the deepest winter. Ned had been skeptical. Lysa was fragile, prone to seeing threats where none existed. But he had also been troubled. Jon Arryn had been investigating something before his death, asking questions, visiting armorers and brothels in King's Landing, places a Hand of the King had no reason to visit. We must be careful, Ned had said finally. If what Lysa claims is true, then the Lannisters are more dangerous than we knew. But we have no proof, only accusations in a letter from a woman who has been unwell since Jon's death. Careful. Ned was always careful, always honorable, always trusting that others shared his values. It was what Catelyn loved about him, and what terrified her in equal measure. The hunting party disappeared through the gate. The sound of horses and dogs and men's voices faded into the distance. The yard grew quieter. Catelyn turned back toward the castle and nearly collided with Septa Mordain, who was herding Sansa and Jeyne Poole toward the sept for morning prayers. "My lady," the Septa said, slightly breathless. "Forgive me, I didn't see you there. No harm done." Catelyn smiled at her daughter. Sansa at 11 was already beautiful, her auburn hair bright in the morning sun, her face alight with the dreams of a girl who believed in songs and knights and true love. "Go on to your prayers, sweetling. I'll join you shortly." Sansa curtsied prettily and continued on with Jeyne. The Septa followed, her keys jingling at her waist. Catelyn stood in the emptying yard and made a decision. Bran was climbing again. She knew this with the certainty of a mother who had spent 7 years trying to keep her son's feet on the ground. The boy was obsessed with heights, had been since he could walk. He climbed the towers, the walls, the covered bridges between buildings. He fed the crows that nested in the broken tower and scrambled up icy stones that would have killed a grown man. She had forbidden it 100 times. Maester Luwin had dropped a clay figurine from the walls to show Bran what would happen to his body if he fell. Old Nan had told stories of boys who climbed too high and were struck by lightning or frozen to the stone. The guards chased him from tower to tower but could never catch him. He was too quick, too fearless, too much like a squirrel skittering along branches. The hunting party would be gone all day. Most of the men had ridden out with Robert. The castle was quieter than it had been since the king arrived, half emptied of the chaos that came with hosting 300 guests. And Bran would take advantage of that quiet to climb. Catelyn crossed the yard toward the old inner ward, the oldest part of Winterfell, where the first keep stood. The first keep was abandoned, had been for generations. The roof had partially collapsed decades ago and no one had bothered to repair it because there were newer, better buildings now. But the walls still stood, and the tower attached to it was still climbable. She would find Bran and make him come down. She would keep him close today, give him tasks that would occupy his restless energy. She would. A sound stopped her. Voices. Coming from inside the first keep. Catelyn froze. The first keep was empty. No one used it. There was no reason for anyone to be inside unless unless they wanted privacy, unless they wanted a place where no one would look for them. The door stood slightly ajar. The voices were muffled but unmistakable. A man and a woman, speaking in tones that suggested intimacy rather than conversation. Catelyn's first thought was servants, some young couple stealing time together away from watchful eyes. She should turn around, leave them to their business, not embarrass them by— The woman laughed. The sound was low and rich and utterly familiar. Queen Cersei. Catelyn's blood went cold. She moved closer to the door, her soft-soled shoes making no sound on the ancient flagstones. The voices were clearer now, coming from somewhere above, the tower portion of the keep, where the stairs led up to what had once been the Lord's chambers before the castle expanded. "Should be with Robert?" the woman's voice said. Not angry, amused. "You're his Kingsguard. You should be protecting him on the hunt. Let Barristan protect him." A man's voice, smooth, confident, with the lazy arrogance of someone who had never been denied anything. "I've protected Robert for 15 years. He can survive one hunt without me. If he's gored by a boar or falls from his horse, then Joffrey becomes king and you become queen regent. Would that be so terrible? You're terrible. What would people say if they knew the great Jaime Lannister shirked his duty to fuck his sister?" The words hit Catelyn like a physical blow. She stood absolutely still, her hand pressed against the stone wall, her mind racing. Jaime Lannister, the Kingslayer, the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard who had sworn vows of chastity and service and protection. And Cersei, the Queen, Robert's wife, brother and sister. Catelyn's first instinct was disbelief. It was too monstrous. Incest was an abomination in the eyes of both the old gods and the new, a crime so foul that even the suggestion of it would. But the voices continued, intimate, familiar, the sound of two people who had done this many times before. Catelyn forced herself to move. One step, two, closer to the doorway. She could see stairs leading up into darkness, could hear the voices more clearly now from somewhere above. She should leave, should run, should pretend she never heard. But her feet carried her forward. There was a gap in the tower wall where stones had fallen away, a hole perhaps 2 feet wide where the interior of the tower was visible. Catelyn moved to it and looked up. She saw them, a room that had once been a lord's chamber, now open to the sky where the roof had collapsed, sunlight streaming down, and in that light, on a cloak spread across the floor, Jaime Lannister, naked, his golden hair bright as a banner, the white Kingsguard cloak discarded beside him like a broken vow, and Cersei, the queen, also naked, astride him, her golden hair falling around her face as she moved. There was no ambiguity, no possibility of misunderstanding. Brother and sister, the queen and the Kingslayer, committing incest in an abandoned tower, while the king hunted beyond the walls. Catelyn's hands went numb, her breath stopped. The world tilted sickeningly. The Lannisters killed Jon Arryn. Lysa's words, the letter, the accusation that had seemed half-mad when she read it. But if this was what Jon Arryn had discovered, if the hand of the king had learned that the queen was fucking her own brother, that the royal children were not Robert's but Jaime's, then murder made perfect sense. Not madness, not paranoia. Simple, brutal logic. Kill the man who knew the secret. Kill anyone who threatened to expose the truth. Catelyn stepped back from the gap in the wall. One step, then another. Her soft shoes made no sound on the stone. The voices above continued, unaware. She turned and walked, not ran, walked, back through the first keep's door and out into the yard. The sun was bright. The day was clear. Everything looked exactly as it had moments ago. But everything had changed. She crossed the yard with the measured pace of a woman who knew how to perform normalcy. Years of managing a great household had taught her to conceal fear, anger, worry behind a face of calm competence. She used that training now. She passed Gage the cook, directing servants toward the kitchens. She nodded to Farlin the kennel master, exercising dogs in the yard. She walked through the covered bridge that connected the armory to the great keep as if nothing in the world was wrong. And then she was in the godswood, 3 acres of dense forest in the heart of Winterfell, the old god's domain. The heart tree at its center, with its bone-white bark and blood-red leaves, its face carved in an expression of eternal anguish. Catelyn had been married in a sept. She kept the 7, not the old gods, but the godswood was private. No one came here without invitation. It was the one place in the castle where she could think. She sank down onto a stone bench near the black pool at the heart tree's base. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them together in her lap and forced herself to breathe. Family, duty, honor. House Tully's words, the lessons her father Hoster had drilled into her from childhood, the hierarchy that governed her life. Family first. Always family first. She had 5 children in this castle. Robb, nearly a man grown, Sansa, her beautiful daughter, Arya, wild and willful, Bran, who climbed towers, Rickon, still a baby, all of them sleeping under the same roof as Jaime Lannister, who had just proven himself capable of the most monstrous transgression imaginable. If the Lannisters knew she had seen, if they suspected for even a moment that their secret was discovered, Catelyn thought of Bran climbing the towers, of what might happen if a 7-year-old boy saw what she had just seen and was foolish enough to be seen in return. They would kill him, without hesitation, without mercy. A child's life meant nothing weighed against the Iron Throne. Her children were in danger, immediate, mortal danger, and she was the only one who knew it. Duty. She was Lady of Winterfell, wife to the Warden of the North, sister to the Lord of Riverrun and the Lady of the Eyrie. She had responsibilities beyond her children, to her house, to the realm, to the truth. Jon Arryn had died for this secret, the hand of the king, murdered in his bed while investigating the Queen's infidelity. How many others had died? How many more would die if the truth stayed buried? Robert had to know. The king had to be told that his wife was betraying him with her own brother, that his children, the heirs to the Iron Throne, were bastards born of incest. Honor, the part of her that had been raised by Hoster Tully, that had married Ned Stark, that believed in oaths and justice, recoiled from what she was contemplating. To accuse a queen of adultery and incest was treason, if the accusation proved false. To move against the Lannisters was to risk war with the richest, most powerful house in Westeros. But honor demanded truth, and the truth was what she had seen with her own eyes. Catelyn sat in the godswood and thought with the cold clarity of a woman who had just walked to the edge of an abyss. She could not go to Robert directly. The king was drunk more often than sober, loud, impulsive, given to rages that shook the rafters. If she told Robert what she had seen while he was deep in his cups, he would roar and shout, and Cersei would hear it through the castle walls. Jaime would be warned. The Lannisters would have time to prepare, to strike first, to kill her children. No, Robert had to be told, but carefully, strategically, when he was sober, when the Lannisters could be taken by surprise. She could not go to Maester Luwin. The old man was wise and loyal, but he served Winterfell, not the Starks specifically. His first instinct would be caution, investigation, verification. He would want proof beyond one woman's word. And while he deliberated, the danger would grow. That left Ned. Catelyn stood. Her legs felt weak, but she forced them to support her weight. She left the godswood and made her way through the castle to the great keep, to the Lord's Solar where Ned conducted the business of the North. The room was empty. Of course it was empty. Ned was hunting with Robert. He would not return until evening at the earliest. She would have to wait. Hours of waiting while knowing what she knew. Hours of performing normalcy while her children played and ate and slept, unaware that a kingslayer and a queen who committed incest were sleeping under the same roof. Catelyn returned to her duties because that was what a lady of Winterfell did. She oversaw the kitchen's preparations for the evening meal. She checked the linens in the guest chambers. She found Septa Mordain and inquired after Sansa's progress in needlework and courtesies. And she found her children. Robb was in the yard with Theon, both of them having stayed behind from the hunt. At 17, Robb was nearly a man, broad-shouldered, auburn-haired, with the easy confidence of an eldest son who had never known real fear. He saw her and smiled. "Mother, is something wrong?" "No, sweetling. I just wanted to see you." She touched his face briefly. "Don't train too hard. Save your strength." He laughed. "I'm not tired. Theon and I were just—" "I know, but humor your mother." She managed a smile and moved on before he could see the fear in her eyes. Sansa was in her chamber with Jane Poole, the 2 girls giggling over some shared secret. Catelyn stood in the doorway watching her daughter, so young, so innocent, dreaming of knights and princes and true love. Prince Joffrey, golden-haired, green-eyed, cruel around the mouth. The boy who was not Robert's son but Jaime's. "Mother," Sansa looked up, her smile fading. "Is something wrong?" "Nothing, sweet one. I was just checking on you." She found Arya in the stables with Micah, the butcher's boy, both of them playing with wooden swords. Arya's hair was tangled, her face smudged with dirt, her dress torn at the hem. Everything a proper lady should not be. Catelyn looked at her fierce, wild daughter and thought, at least you would fight. At least you would not go quietly. Arya, you're filthy. I know what you were doing. Go clean yourself. Now. Arya scowled, but obeyed. Micah ducked his head and mumbled an apology. Catelyn watched them go and felt her throat tighten. She found Bran in the library with Maester Luwin, studying maps. At 7, Bran was small for his age, but quick and bright, his gray eyes always watching, always curious. Bran, did you climb today? He looked guilty. Only a little, just to the top of the library tower to see. No more climbing. Not today. I want you here, with Maester Luwin, studying. Do you understand? But mother, do you understand? Yes, mother. She kissed the top of his head and left before the tears could come. Rickon was in the nursery with Old Man, playing with carved wooden animals. At 3, he was too young to understand danger, too young to know that the world was not safe. Catelyn knelt and pulled him into her arms. He squirmed but let her hold him, his small body warm and solid and alive. Love you, Mama, he said in his high, clear voice. I love you too, sweet boy, so much. She stayed there with him until Old Nan cleared her throat meaningfully, and Catelyn realized she was crushing the child. She released him and stood wiping her eyes quickly. The afternoon crept by with agonizing slowness. Catelyn performed her duties on instinct, while her mind worked through scenarios, possibilities, dangers. She could not warn Cersei. The thought was absurd. Why would she warn a woman who had committed treason, who had likely murdered Jon Arryn, who would kill anyone who threatened her secret? That was Ned's instinct, the honorable man's instinct to give even enemies a chance. But Catelyn was Tully-born, raised on family, duty, honor in that order. Warning Cersei meant giving her time to prepare, time to strike first, time to kill. She could not confront Jaime directly. The man was the finest swordsman in the 7 kingdoms. He had killed the Mad King with his own hands. If cornered, if threatened, he would react with violence, and Jaime fighting his way through Winterfell meant blood in the halls where her children slept. She could not wait. Every hour that passed was an hour the Lannisters might discover she knew. Every moment was a risk. No, she had to tell Ned tonight. Convince him to act. Convince him not to make the mistakes his honor would demand, and that would be the hardest part of all. The hunting party returned as the sun was setting. Catelyn stood in the yard watching them ride through the hunter's gate. Robert was drunk and triumphant, a boar slung across his horse's back. Ned rode beside him, quieter as always, his face tired but content. The men dismounted, stable boys took the horses. Robert bellowed for wine and food and a bath. Ned caught Catelyn's eye across the yard and she saw him register something in her expression. A tension, a urgency, that made him frown. She gave a slight shake of her head. Not here, not now. He nodded fractionally and turned to help Robert with his horse. The evening meal was chaos. Robert demanded a feast to celebrate his kill. The boar was roasted in the great hall's huge hearth. Wine flowed. Songs were sung. The king told the story of the hunt 3 times, growing more elaborate with each retelling. Catelyn sat beside Ned at the high table and forced herself to eat, to smile, to nod at the appropriate moments. Across the hall, Cersei sat with her ladies, beautiful and remote, her face a mask of boredom. Jaime stood behind Robert's chair in his white cloak, as if he had been at his post all day instead of fucking his sister in an abandoned tower. The meal lasted hours. Catelyn thought she would scream if it went on any longer. Finally, Robert stood and declared he was going to bed. The hall began to empty. Ned helped the king to his chambers, then returned to find Catelyn waiting by the stairs. Our bedchamber, she said quietly. Now, they climbed the stairs in silence. Their chamber was the hottest in Winterfell, built directly over the hot springs. The fire burning in the hearth made it almost uncomfortably warm. Catelyn barred the door behind them. Ned turned to face her. Cat, what's wrong? You've been like a ghost all evening. Sit down. Cat, please, sit down. I need to tell you something, and you need to hear all of it before you speak. Catelyn stood before him, her hands clasped to keep them from shaking. This morning while you were hunting, I went looking for Bran. I thought he might be climbing again. Her voice was steady. Years of practice keeping fear hidden. I went to the old inner ward. To the first keep. Is abandoned. I know, but I heard voices inside. A man and a woman. She met his eyes. It was Queen Cersei. And Jaime Lannister. Ned's face went still. What do you mean? I mean, I saw them, Ned. Together. Naked. Committing incest in the tower. The silence that followed was absolute. Ned stared at her as if she had spoken in a foreign language. Then he stood abruptly. Cat, you must be mistaken. The light, the distance. I saw them clearly. There was a gap in the wall. I looked through and I saw Jaime Lannister and Queen Cersei having sex. Brother and sister. The Kingslayer and the Queen. Her voice hardened. And suddenly, Lysa's letter makes perfect sense. Ned's face drained of color. Jon Arryn. Yes. Jon Arryn. What if this is what he discovered? What if the hand of the king learned that the queen was fucking her twin brother and the royal children were bastards born of incest? That would be reason enough to kill him, wouldn't it? His hands were shaking. The children, Joffrey, Myrcella, Tommen. I'm saying look at them, Ned. All three of them. Golden hair, green eyes. They look nothing like Robert. They look exactly like Jaime. She moved closer. Robert's bastards are all dark-haired. Every single one. Maya Stone in the Vale. Gendry in King's Landing. All of them with black hair. The seed is strong, that's what they say about Baratheon blood. It dominates in every union. Except the Queen's children. Except the Queen's children. Because they're not Robert's. They're Jaime's. Ned stood again. He reached for his boots. I have to tell Robert. Now. Tonight. He has to know. No. The word came out sharp enough to make Ned freeze. Catelyn grabbed his arm. You cannot tell Robert tonight. Cat, if what you're saying is true, it is true. I saw them with my own eyes. But think, Ned. Think before you act. She forced him to meet her gaze. Robert is drunk. He's been drinking since the hunt ended. If you tell him now, he'll roar and rage, and Cersei will hear it through the castle walls. And then what? Jaime is the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. He sleeps with a sword beside his bed. It's his right as a knight. Do you want to fight the finest swordsman in Westeros in a corridor at midnight, with our children sleeping down the hall? Ned's jaw clenched. Then what do you suggest? Tell him tomorrow, at first light, when he's sober, when you can control how he reacts. She gripped both his arms now. And Ned, you cannot warn them first. Warn them. Do not tell Cersei you know. Do not give Jaime a chance to flee or fight. Do not. She saw him pulling away, saw the honor in him recoiling from the idea of a trap. She gentled her voice. Do not repeat Jon Arryn's mistake. He investigated the truth, and someone killed him for it. If the Lannisters know we've discovered their secret, what do you think they'll do? Ask politely to leave? Or kill everyone who knows? I cannot simply, this is the Queen, Cat, the King's wife. I cannot arrest her without proof. I am the proof. I saw them. I will swear it before Robert, before the old gods and the new, my word as Lady of Winterfell. Her voice dropped. And you believe me, don't you? You know I'm not mistaken. You know I wouldn't lie about something like this. Ned looked at her. She saw the war in his face. Honor against pragmatism, the right thing against the smart thing. Finally, he nodded. I believe you. But Cat, if we do this, if we accuse the Queen of incest and treason, there's no going back. If we're wrong, we're not wrong. I saw them. If the proof doesn't hold, Robert could see it as a northern plot against the crown. He could. Ned stopped, shook his head. He won't. Robert trusts me. He knows I wouldn't lie. Then tell him, tomorrow, sober, in the godswood where no one can overhear. She released his arms. But let me make preparations tonight. Quietly. Just precautions. What kind of precautions? Extra guards at the gates. The children kept close. Men positioned where they need to be when Robert believes you and orders the Lannisters arrested. She saw him about to object. Please, Ned. Think of our children. Think of what happened to Jon Arryn. We need to be smart about this. Ned was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. All right, you make your preparations. But quietly. I don't want the Lannisters suspicious. They won't be. I promise. He pulled her close. She pressed her face against his chest, and felt his heart hammering. "How did it come to this?" he asked quietly. "How did we end up in the middle of something like this?" "Because Jon Arryn trusted you enough to call you south. Because the Lannisters are monsters and someone has to stop them." She pulled back to look at him. "We can do this, Ned. We can protect our children and serve justice at the same time. But we have to be smart. We have to be careful. Can you do that?" "I can try. That's all I ask." She kissed him. "Sleep. Rest. You'll need your strength tomorrow." But Catelyn did not sleep. When Ned's breathing deepened into the rhythms of exhausted slumber, she rose and dressed and moved through the castle like a ghost. She found Jory Castle in the guards' quarters and drew him aside. "Jory, I need you to double the men at every gate. Tonight. Now." He frowned. "My lady? Has something happened?" "I heard wolves in the Wolfswood. Closer than usual. Large ones. I want the gates secured." The lie came smoothly. She had been lying to protect people her entire life. "Don't make it obvious. Just quietly add men to each watch." "Can you do that?" "Of course, my lady. Right away." She found Ser Roderick Cassell, the master-at-arms, in his quarters near the armory. "Sir Roderick, I need you to ensure the armory is properly locked tonight, and post a man at the door." The old knight's mustache bristled. "Is there a threat, my lady?" "Call it caution. Too many strangers in the castle. Too many opportunities for theft. I'd feel better knowing our weapons are secure. I'll see to it personally." She went to Maester Lewin's tower and found him still awake, reading by candlelight. "Maester, I need you to prepare ravens, 3 of them, for River Run, the Eyrie, and Dragonstone." Lewin set down his book. "My lady, it's very late. I know, and I know this seems strange, but I need the ravens ready to fly at dawn. Don't send them yet. Just prepare them. Can you do that without asking why?" The old man studied her face. Whatever he saw there made him nod. "I can. The messages? I'll provide them in the morning. For now, just be ready." She checked on the children one final time. Robb and Bran and Rickon were asleep in their chambers. Sansa slept in the girls' dormitory with Jane Poole. Arya was curled in her bed with her direwolf pup Nymeria at her feet. All of them safe. All of them whole. All of them sleeping peacefully, unaware that their mother had just set in motion events that would change their lives forever. Catelyn returned to her chamber as the first gray light of dawn touched the eastern sky. Ned was still sleeping. She sat in a chair by the window and watched the sun rise over Winterfell. In a few hours, she would wake her husband. They would go to the godswood. They would tell Robert Baratheon that his wife had betrayed him with her own brother, that his children were bastards, that the throne and the succession and everything he had built his reign upon was a lie. And then, gods help them all, the world would change. Catelyn Stark woke Ned an hour before dawn. He sat up immediately, the soldier's instinct to wake alert and ready despite having slept only a few hours. His gray eyes found hers in the dim light from the hearth's dying fire. "Is it time?" he asked. "Soon. Robert will be waking. We should be in the godswood before he's fully conscious." She handed him a cup of water. "Drink. You'll need a clear head." Ned drank, then stood and began dressing. He strapped ice across his back, not because he expected to fight, but because a lord of Winterfell delivering a death sentence did not go unarmed. Catelyn watched him settle the great Valyrian steel blade into place and thought, "This is real. This is happening." "The children," Ned asked. "All accounted for. All safe. Jory has men at every gate. Sir Roderick has the armory locked and guarded. Maester Lewin has ravens prepared for River Run, the Eyrie, and Dragonstone." She met his eyes. "If this goes wrong, we can have help on the way within hours." "It won't go wrong. Robert trusts me." She helped him with his cloak. "Remember, do not warn them. Do not give Cersei time to prepare a defense. We tell Robert, we let him process it, and then we move fast." "Agreed." "Agreed." They left the great keep and crossed the yard in the pre-dawn darkness. Winterfell was quiet at this hour. The guards on the walls, a few servants beginning their day in the kitchens, but most of the castle still asleep. The godswood gate was unguarded. It never needed guards. No one came to the godswood uninvited. They walked the path through 3 acres of dense forest to the heart tree. The weirwood loomed before them, its bone-white trunk massive and ancient, its red leaves rustling in the morning breeze. The face carved into the bark screamed silently, perpetually, its eyes weeping bloody sap. Catelyn had been married in a sept in River Run. before the seven-sided altars of the seven. She kept the new gods, not the old. But standing here in the godswood, she felt the weight of something ancient watching. The old gods, if they existed, would witness what happened here. "I'll send for Robert," Ned said. "Not you. Send Jory. Tell him it's a private matter, that you need to speak with the king before the household wakes." Catelyn gripped his arm. "And Ned, make sure Robert knows this is serious, important enough that he needs to come sober." Ned nodded and walked back toward the castle. Catelyn stood alone before the heart tree and tried to calm her racing heart. Family, duty, honor. She was doing this for her family, for her children who slept unknowing while monsters wearing crowns and white cloaks plotted and schemed. For Ned, who was too honorable to see treachery until it had already struck. For the realm which deserved to know that its heirs were bastards born of the most vile sin imaginable. 15 minutes passed, then 20. Catelyn heard footsteps on the path and turned. Robert Baratheon emerged from the trees, Ned at his side. The king looked terrible, his face puffy and red from drink, his eyes bloodshot, his massive body moving with the careful deliberation of a man fighting a vicious headache. But he was here, awake, as sober as Robert ever got these days. "Ned," Robert said, his voice a low rumble. "What's this about? Why are we meeting in the godswood at dawn, like conspirators, where no one can overhear?" Ned's voice was steady despite the enormity of what he was about to do. "Robert, I need you to listen to everything before you speak. Can you do that?" Robert's eyes narrowed. He looked from Ned to Catelyn, registering her presence with surprise. "Your lady wife is here. This must be serious." "It is. Sit, please." There were no chairs in the godswood, but Robert lowered himself onto a fallen log near the heart tree's pool. Ned stood before him. Catelyn positioned herself to one side where Robert could see her face, where he could judge the truth of her words when Ned told him what they had discovered. "Robert," Ned began, "yesterday while we were hunting, Catelyn was searching for Bran. You know the boy climbs. We're always chasing him down from towers. I, fearless little thing, reminds me of you as a boy." Robert's tone was fond despite his obvious discomfort. "She went to the old inner ward, to the first keep, which has been abandoned for generations," and she heard voices inside. Ned paused. A man and a woman, in the tower. Robert frowned. Servants, probably. Young ones looking for privacy too. It wasn't servants. Ned's voice was flat. It was Queen Cersei and Jaime Lannister. Robert stared at Ned as if he had spoken in a foreign tongue. Then his face began to change, confusion giving way to understanding, understanding to disbelief, disbelief to something darker. "What are you saying?" The words came out very quiet. "Dangerous. I'm saying Catelyn saw them together, naked, committing incest." Ned's hands were clenched at his sides. "I'm saying your wife is betraying you with her twin brother. I'm saying the Queen and the Kingslayer are..." "Liar. She's cold. She's proud. She despises me. But she wouldn't. Not her own brother." "Your Grace." Catelyn stepped forward. Her voice was calm, steady, the voice of a woman who had spent years managing crisis after crisis in a great household. "I saw them, with my own eyes. There was a gap in the tower wall. I looked through, and I saw Jaime Lannister and Queen Cersei together. There was no mistaking what they were doing. No possibility of misunderstanding." "You're absolutely certain?" "I am. I swear it before the old gods and the new. I saw the Queen and her brother committing incest in the first keep tower." "When? What time?" "Late morning, while you were hunting. Jaime stayed behind. He should have been with you, protecting you as his Kingsguard oath demands. Instead, he was with his sister." Robert's breathing was coming hard now, like a bull before a charge. "Jaime stayed behind. I remember. He said he had duties at the castle. I thought..." He stopped, turned to Ned. "You believe her?" "I believe her absolutely. Catelyn would not lie about something like this. And Robert? It explains so much." Ned moved closer. Jon Arryn was investigating something before he died, asking questions, visiting armorers in the city, looking at Robert Baratheon's bastards. Why would the hand of the king care about your bastards unless he was comparing them to something? To someone? "The royal children," Robert said slowly. Horror was beginning to replace rage on his face. "Joffrey, Marcella, Tommen, all golden-haired, all green-eyed, all looking exactly like Jaime Lannister. Ned's voice was gentle now, as if he were delivering news of a death. And none of them looking anything like you. Robert, think. Every bastard you've sired has black hair. Maya Stone in the Vale. Gendry in King's Landing. Bara, the baby in the brothel. Every one of them with Baratheon black hair. The seed is strong. That's what they say about your house. Your blood dominates in every union. Except the Queen's children. Except the Queen's children. Because they're not yours, Robert. They're Jaime's. All three of them. Bastards born of incest between the Queen and her twin brother. For a long moment he said nothing, just stared at the dark pool beneath the heart tree. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. I should have known. I should have seen. Joffrey, that cruel little shit, never had an ounce of me in him. And Cersei, he laughed, a sound with no humor in it. Cersei looks at me like I'm something she stepped in. 15 years of marriage and she's never once looked at me the way she looks at... He stopped. At her brother. At Jaime. I'm sorry, Robert. Ned's voice was thick with genuine grief. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. Be useful. Robert stood again. His hands were shaking, but his voice was gaining strength. You're certain about this? Both of you? You're willing to swear it? Yes, Ned said. Yes, Catelyn echoed. Then I need to see them. Need to... Robert's hands clenched into fists. I want to kill him. I want to crush Jaime Lannister's skull the way I crushed Rhaegar's on the trident. I want to... Your Grace. Catelyn stepped directly into his line of sight, forcing him to focus on her. Jaime Lannister is the finest swordsman in the Seven Kingdoms. If you confront him now, if you give him any warning, he will fight. And in a fight, even you could be hurt, even killed. I don't care. But we do. The realm does. You're the king. She held his gaze. Let Lord Stark's men take them. Both of them. In their chambers, before they wake, before they can prepare a defense. Let it be done safely. Then you can pronounce judgment as a king should, with all the realm watching. Robert's chest was heaving. She could see him fighting the urge to storm directly to the guest house and start breaking things. But he was also listening. That was the difference between Robert the warrior and Robert the king. The king, when pressed, could sometimes be reasoned with. How? Robert demanded. How do we do this without warning them? Ned spoke. Catelyn positioned guards at all the gates last night, doubled the watch. No one can leave Winterfell without us knowing. The armory is secured. We control the castle completely. We send men to their chambers at dawn, Catelyn continued. 20 men to Jaime's quarters, armed with crossbows, not swords. One man, even the greatest swordsman alive, cannot fight 20 crossbow bolts. And another squad to the Queen's chambers simultaneously. We take them both before they know what's happening. And the children, Robert's face was tortured. Joffrey, Myrcella, Tommen, what about them? The moral abyss at the heart of this entire affair. She thought of Joffrey, 13 years old, cruel and vicious, but still a child. Of Myrcella, sweet and gentle. Of Tommen, who loved his kittens and cried easily. Children who had committed no crime except being born. But Robert's canonical response to such children was well established. Catelyn remembered the stories from the sack of King's Landing, how Robert had looked at the bodies of Rhaegar's infant children, murdered by the mountain and presented to him wrapped in Lannister crimson cloaks, and called it justice. How he had demanded Daenerys Targaryen's assassination across the narrow sea, because a Targaryen child with a Dothraki warlord for a husband was a threat to his throne. The children should be secured as well, Med said quietly. Not harmed, but secured. They're innocent of their parents' crimes, Robert. They didn't choose to be born. Innocent? Robert's laugh was bitter. They're abominations, named as such in Sept and Godswood alike. Bastards born of incest. Do you know what the faith says about such creatures? They're children, Catelyn said. Whatever their parents did, whatever sin brought them into the world, they're still children. And Robert, she chose her words with surgical care. The realm needs to see you as just, not as a man who kills children out of rage. If you want the truth of their parentage to be believed, to be accepted, you need to show mercy where you can. The twins are guilty, the children are not. Robert was quiet for a long moment. What would you have me do with them? Raise them here in the north, far from the politics of King's Landing. Or send them to the faith, the boys to the citadel, or the wall, the girl to the Silent Sisters. Let them live, but let them live in obscurity. Tywin Lannister won't accept that. The moment he learns his grandchildren, Robert stopped, corrected himself bitterly. The moment he learns Jaime's bastards are taken, he'll march every sword in the Westerlands north. Let him try. Catelyn's voice was steel. You have the Stormlands, the north, the Riverlands, through Lord Eddard's marriage to me, the Vale through Jon Arryn's widow. If Stannis learns the truth about the children, and he will, because we'll send him word, you'll have Dragonstone, and likely the loyalty of many lords who respect his adherence to law. The Tyrells have been seeking a royal marriage for Marjorie. Offer them Joffrey after he's been made a ward and legitimized under a new name. And you have the reach. She was counting on her fingers now, marking out the political map of Westeros with the precision of a woman raised among the great houses. And Dorne? She continued. Prince Doran has spent 15 years nursing his hatred of the Lannisters for what they did to his sister Elia and her children. The moment he learns you're moving against Tywin, he'll join you. That's 6 of the 7 kingdoms, Robert. Tywin is isolated in the Westerlands with no allies. He might fight out of pride, but he'll lose. Robert stared at her. You've thought about this? Planned for it. I've thought about keeping my family safe. Everything else follows from that. She met his eyes. We're offering you the truth, Your Grace, and a way to act on it without plunging the realm into chaos. But you need to move quickly, and you need to move smart. Can you do that? I can. Robert straightened. Some of the old warrior king was returning to his posture, pushing aside the cuckolded husband. Ned, gather your men. I want Jaime Lannister and Cersei taken within the hour. Both of them in chains. Do it quietly. I don't want panic in the castle. It will be done. Ned turned to leave, then paused. Robert, I need to know. What will you do to them? To Jaime and Cersei. Jaime broke his Kingsguard vows. He killed the king he swore to protect, and now he's fucked the queen he swore to serve with honor. He dies. I don't care how. He took a shaking breath. Cersei betrayed me, made me a laughingstock, put bastards in the line of succession. She was going to let one of Jaime's whelps sit the Iron Throne, and I would never have known. She dies too, but I want her to watch Jaime die first. I want her to see what her actions cost. Catelyn felt ice in her stomach but said nothing. This was justice by the laws of Westeros. Harsh, brutal, but lawful. The penalty for treason was death. The penalty for incest was death. Cersei and Jaime had committed both. The children, Ned pressed. I'll decide after I've had time to think, after I'm less. Robert gestured vaguely at himself, at the rage and grief and humiliation warring across his face. After I'm less likely to do something I'll regret. For now, keep them secured. Keep them safe. Keep them away from me. It will be done. Ned looked at Catelyn. She nodded. They left the godswood together, leaving Robert standing before the heart tree, staring at the screaming face carved into the weirwood as if seeking wisdom from gods who no longer answered prayers. The operation began 30 minutes later. Jory Castle led 20 men to the quarters assigned to Jaime Lannister in the guest house complex. They moved quickly and quietly through the pre-dawn darkness. Catelyn had positioned herself in the covered bridge between the armory and the Great Keep, a vantage point where she could see the guest house entrance but remain out of sight. She had insisted on being present. Ned had objected, arguing that she had already done her part and should stay safe with the children. But Catelyn had been firm. This was her discovery, her accusation, her responsibility to see through to the end. If something went wrong, she needed to know immediately. Jory's men entered the guest house. Minutes passed. Catelyn held her breath. Then she heard it. A shout. A crash. The sound of men moving quickly. But no clash of swords. No screams. Just the controlled chaos of an arrest, rather than a battle. 5 minutes later, Jory emerged with his men. In the center of the group, Jaime Lannister walked with his hands chained behind his back. He was still in his nightclothes, his golden hair disheveled, his face a mask of cold fury. But he was alive, unharmed, captive. 20 crossbows had been enough. Even the Kingslayer could not fight 20 bolts aimed at his chest from 10 feet away. A second group, led by Sir Roderick, had gone to Cersei's chambers simultaneously. They emerged moments later with the Queen between them. Unlike Jaime, Cersei was fighting, pulling against her captors, spitting curses, demanding to know what was happening. "I am your queen," her voice carried across the yard. "You have no right to lay hands on me. I demand to see the king." "I demand, you'll see the king," Jory said grimly. He's the one who ordered your arrest. Cersei's face went pale. She stopped struggling. Her green eyes darted from Jory to the men around her, calculating, searching for an escape that didn't exist. On what charge, she demanded. What am I accused of? Jory's voice was flat. You'll stand trial before the king and gods. Until then, you're confined to the dungeons. You have no proof. This is a lie. A northern conspiracy to— Lady Catelyn saw you, Jory interrupted. Saw you and Sir Jaime together in the first keep. She'll swear to it before Robert. That's all the proof the king needs. Cersei's gaze snapped to where Catelyn stood in the covered bridge. Their eyes met across the yard. Catelyn saw the moment Cersei understood, saw calculation shift to naked hatred. You, Cersei hissed. You northern bitch. You'll regret this. My father will. Your father is 1,000 miles away, Catelyn said. Her voice carried clearly in the morning air. And by the time he learns what you've done, it will be too late. Take them to the dungeons. Separately, I don't want them able to speak to each other. Jory nodded. His men led Jaime toward the great keep and the entrance to the dungeons below. Ser Roderick's group took Cersei in the opposite direction, toward a different entrance to ensure the twins could not coordinate a story. Catelyn watched them go and felt no triumph. Only a cold certainty that this was necessary, that every moment of delay would have endangered her children, that the Lannisters, if given any warning, would have struck first and struck hard. She turned to find Ned beside her. It's done, he said quietly. The children, being woken now, brought to the great hall under guard, not harshly, we're telling them it's for their safety. That something has happened and the king wants them protected. He paused. Joffrey tried to order the guards to release him, threw a tantrum when they refused. Myrcella cried. Tommen asked if his mother was all right. Catelyn closed her eyes briefly. They're children. They don't understand what their parents have done, what they are. I know. But Robert— Ned shook his head. I've never seen him like this, Cat. Not even during the rebellion. He's past reason right now. I'm afraid of what he might do. We watch him. We counsel him. We remind him that the realm is watching how he handles this. She opened her eyes. But Ned, the twins have to die. You know that. There's no other option. If they live, if they're exiled or sent to the wall or kept prisoner, they'll always be a threat. Tywin will always have a reason to march. The secret will always be alive. They have to die. I know. Ned's voice was heavy. I just wish there was another way. There isn't. Not for this. She took his hand. Come, we should be present when Robert questions them. Someone needs to make sure he doesn't kill them before they can confess. The dungeons beneath Winterfell were extensive, carved from living rock, older than the castle above, dating back to the Age of Heroes. They had cells for prisoners, storage for food in winter, even a well that tapped into the same hot springs that heated the castle. Jaime Lannister was in a cell near the entrance, chained to the wall with heavy iron manacles. He stood when Catelyn and Ned entered, his green eyes cold. Lord Stark, Jaime said. His voice was calm, almost amused. This is quite the welcome. I thought northern hospitality was legendary. You're accused of treason, Ned said. Of breaking your Kingsguard vows. Of incest with the Queen. Accused by whom? Your wife? Jaime's gaze shifted to Catelyn. A woman's word against a knight of the Kingsguard. I wonder which Robert will believe. He'll believe me, Catelyn said, because I saw you, in the first keep tower, with Queen Cersei. There's no point denying it. I'm not denying anything. Jaime's smile was sharp. I'm simply pointing out that you have no proof beyond your own claim, and the word of one woman, however noble, isn't enough to execute a Lannister. Robert seems to think it is. Ned stepped closer to the cell. You stayed behind from the hunt, derelict in your duty as Kingsguard. Why? I had duties at the castle. What duties? Personal ones. Jaime's smile widened. I'm entitled to private time, Lord Stark. Even Kingsguard knights are allowed some privacy. Privacy to fuck your sister? Be careful, Lord Stark. Accusations of that sort are true. We know they're true. The question is whether you're fool enough to deny it or man enough to admit it. Ned's gray eyes were hard. I've known you since you were 16, Jaime. Since you sat on Aerys Targaryen's throne with his blood on your sword and told us you'd killed the Mad King. You looked me in the eye that day and said you'd done it to save the city, to save 500,000 lives. Was that true? Yes. Then look me in the eye now and tell me you haven't been bedding your sister. Tell me those children Cersei birthed are Robert's and not yours. Tell me Jon Arryn didn't discover the truth and die for it. Jaime was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had lost its mockery. Jon Arryn was an old man. He died of a fever. I had nothing to do with that. But you were fucking Cersei. Yes. The admission came out flat. Simple. Yes, I was. I have been. Since we were children ourselves, long before she married Robert. Since before Robert was even king. Catelyn felt her stomach turn despite having known this was coming. And the children? Joffrey, Myrcella, Tommen? The confession hung in the air like a death sentence. Because that's what it was. Jaime had just signed his own execution order. Why? Ned asked. Why risk everything? Why commit treason, break your vows, endanger your house? Because I love her. Jaime's voice was quiet but absolute. I've loved Cersei since we shared a womb. She's the only woman I've ever wanted. The only woman I'll ever want. Robert was a drunken fool who won his throne with a hammer and thought that gave him the right to anything he desired. He never deserved her, never even tried to make her happy. So you gave him bastards and let him think they were his heirs. Catelyn's voice was cold. You let him raise another man's children as princes and princesses. You committed the most vile sin the gods recognize and called it love. Call it what you want. I won't apologize for it. You'll die for it. Ned's words were certain. Robert will have your head, probably Cersei's too. And your children, he stopped. What about my children? Jaime's composure cracked. They're innocent. Whatever Cersei and I did, whatever sins we committed, Joffrey, Myrcella, Tommen are children. They didn't choose this. They're bastards born of incest, Catelyn said. Abominations in the eyes of gods and men. Robert would be within his rights to execute them along with you. Jaime's face went white. No, Robert wouldn't. He's not that much of a monster. He approved the murder of Rhaegar's children after the sack of King's Landing, Ned said quietly. Called it justice when the mountain presented him with their bodies. He's demanded Daenerys Targaryen's assassination across the narrow sea because a pregnant Targaryen princess frightens him. Don't assume Robert Baratheon has mercy when it comes to threats to his throne. They're children. Jaime's voice broke. They're my children. I'll confess to anything, do anything. If Robert spares them, please, I'm begging you. Catelyn looked at the Kingslayer, the man who had murdered the king he swore to protect, who had betrayed his vows in the most fundamental way possible, who had put bastards in the line of succession and threatened the stability of the entire realm. And she saw a father begging for his children's lives. I'll speak to Robert, she said. I'll argue for mercy for the children. But Jaime, you and Cersei are going to die. There's no escaping that. The best you can hope for is that your children live. Jaime sagged against his chains. Then that's what I hope for. That's all I can hope for now. They left him in the darkness and moved to Cersei's cell on the opposite side of the dungeons. The queen was not standing. She sat on the stone bench in her cell, her golden hair tangled, her face pale but composed. When Catelyn and Ned entered, Cersei looked up with cold green eyes. Come to gloat, Cersei asked. The noble northerners who caught the wicked queen in her sin. We came to give you a chance to confess, Ned said. To admit what you've done before you face Robert. And why would I confess to anything? Because Jaime already has. Catelyn watched Cersei's face closely. He admitted everything. The affair, the children's parentage. All of it, he's trying to save Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen by cooperating. You should do the same. Cersei was quiet for a moment. What did he say exactly? That he's been sleeping with you since you were children. That all three of your children are his, not Robert's. That Jon Arryn discovered the truth, though Jaime claims he didn't kill him. Ned paused. Is that accurate? Jaime didn't kill Jon Arryn, Cersei said. I did. Or rather, I had it done. Lysa Arryn was easily manipulated, promised her son would be safe if she helped me. She poisoned her husband and sent that letter to her sister blaming the Lannisters, just as I instructed. You had Lysa kill her own husband? Lysa killed Jon Arryn because she was weak and stupid and believed my promises. I needed the old man dead before he could tell Robert what he'd discovered. Cersei's smile was bitter. It would have worked too if your husband hadn't come south his hand. if you hadn't gone snooping where you didn't belong. You admit it then, Ned said. The incest. The bastards. The murder. I admit that I did what I had to do to protect myself and my children. I admit that I loved the wrong man and paid for it every day I spent married to Robert Baratheon. Cersei stood. I admit that if I had it to do again, I'd make the same choices. Jaime is worth 1,000 Roberts. Our children are worth more than any throne. They're bastards. They have no claim to anything. They're mine. That's all that matters. It won't matter when Robert has you executed for treason. Cersei laughed. Robert won't touch me. The moment my father hears what's happened, he'll march every sword in the Westerlands north. Tywin Lannister doesn't forgive insults to his family. He'll burn Winterfell to the ground and hang every Stark from the walls. Your father is 1,000 miles away, Ned said. And by the time he learns what you've done, it will be too late. Robert has the North, the Riverlands, the Stormlands, the Vale, and likely Dorne once they learn he's moving against the family that murdered Princess Elia. Tywin is alone, Cersei, and you're going to die. For the first time, fear cracked through Cersei's composure. My children will be taken as wards, raised far from King's Landing. They'll live, but they'll never sit the Iron Throne. Catelyn's voice was firm. That's the best you can hope for, the best any of us can give them. Cersei sank back onto the bench. I want to see them. Before whatever Robert decides to do, I want to see my children one more time. I'll ask, Catelyn said. But I make no promises. They left Cersei in her cell and returned to the surface. The castle was fully awake now. Word had spread that the Queen and the Kingslayer had been arrested, that something terrible had happened. Servants whispered in corners. Guards stood at attention, nervous and uncertain. The entire household felt the tension like a storm about to break. Robert was in the great hall, sitting in the Lord's seat with a cup of wine in his hand. The 3 royal children stood before him under guard, Joffrey pale and furious, Myrcella crying quietly, Tommen clinging to his sister's hand. Catelyn and Ned entered. Robert looked up. They confessed? He asked. Yes, Ned said. Both of them. Jaime admitted the affair and the children's parentage. Cersei admitted to having Jon Arryn murdered. She convinced Lysa Arryn to poison him. So, it's true. All of it. These children. He looked at Joffrey, Myrcella, Tommen. These children are Jaime's bastards. Not mine. Never mine. Father? Myrcella's voice was small and frightened. What's happening? Where's Mother? I'm not your father, Robert said. His voice was heavy with grief and rage. I'm nothing to you. You're Lannister bastards. Abominations born of incest. Joffrey's face went red. How dare you? I'm the crown prince. You're nothing. Robert stood. You're a bastard. Illegitimate. You have no claim to my throne. No claim to my name. No claim to anything. This is a lie. Joffrey's voice cracked. A northern conspiracy. You can't. Robert backhanded him across the face. The blow sent Joffrey sprawling. Myrcella screamed. Tommen burst into tears. Your Grace. Ned moved between Robert and the children. They're children. They don't. They're Lannister spawn. Robert's voice was shaking. They're the proof of 15 years of humiliation. Every time I looked at them, I thought they were mine. My heirs. My legacy. And all that time they were his. Jaime's. The Kingslayer's bastards. I know, Ned said quietly. I know, Robert. But beating them won't change what happened. It won't undo Cersei's betrayal. All it does is make you look like a man who punishes children for their parents' sins. Robert looked at his oldest friend. Ned met his gaze steadily. What would you have me do? Robert asked. Let them live? Pretend they're innocent? They are innocent. Of the incest, of the treason, of the murder. They knew nothing. They're victims of their parents' crimes as much as you are. Ned's voice was steady. Show mercy where you can, Robert. It's what makes a king great instead of merely powerful. Robert looked back at the children. Joffrey was on the floor, blood running from his split lip, his eyes full of hate. Myrcella wept. Tommen trembled. Take them away, Robert said finally. Put them somewhere secure. I'll decide what to do with them later. The guards led the children from the hall. Catelyn watched them go and thought, we saved them, for now. But what comes next will determine whether this was mercy or merely delayed execution. Robert sank back into the Lord's seat. What about Jaime and Cersei? They die, Ned said. There's no other option. Treason, adultery, incest, murder. The crimes demand death. Aye, they do. Robert drank from his cup. I want it done publicly. I want the whole realm to see what happens to people who betray their king. We'll take them back to King's Landing. Try them properly before the court. Execute them on the steps of the Great Sept where everyone can watch. That's a month's journey, Catelyn said. A month where Tywin Lannister learns what's happened and has time to respond. A month where anything could go wrong. Then we do it here, Robert said. Tomorrow? In Winterfell's yard. Public enough that word will spread. Quick enough that Tywin can't interfere. He looked at Ned. You'll carry out the sentence. You're Warden of the North. You have the authority. Ned's face was grim. As you command, Your Grace. Catelyn touched Ned's arm gently. They both knew what this meant. Ned would have to execute 2 people who had confessed their crimes. One of them a knight he had known since the Kingslayer was 16. The other the mother of 3 children who, despite everything, loved her. I'll help prepare, Catelyn said. Maester Luwin needs to send those ravens now. To Riverrun, the Eyrie, Dragonstone. The great houses need to know what's happened before rumors twist the truth. Do it. Robert stood, and Cat. Thank you, for seeing what you saw, for having the courage to tell us. He stopped, for doing what Jon Arryn died trying to do. You saved the realm from a lie that would have destroyed it. She nodded. I did what any mother would do. I protected my family. You did more than that, but I'll take the thanks anyway. Robert left the hall, his steps heavy, heading toward his chambers to drink himself into the numbness he needed. Catelyn and Ned stood alone in the great hall. It's not over, Ned said quietly. When Tywin learns what's happened, then we'll face it, together, with all our allies. She gripped his hand. We did the right thing, Ned. The hard thing. The necessary thing. We saved our children and served justice. That has to be enough. I hope so, Ned said, because there's no going back now. What if Catelyn Stark caught Jaime and Cersei? Part 3. Maester Luwin's ravens flew at midday. Catelyn stood in the rookery watching the old maester attach the messages to the birds' legs with practiced efficiency. 3 ravens, 1 for Riverrun, 1 for the Eyrie, 1 for Dragonstone, each carrying the same essential message, tailored slightly for its recipient. The Queen and the Kingslayer have confessed to incest. The royal children are bastards, not Robert's heirs. Treason has been committed and justice will be done. Stand ready. They'll reach their destinations in 3 to 5 days, Luwin said. He released the last raven and watched it wheel north toward the Eyrie. Lord Hoster will call the Riverlands banners the moment he reads your letter. Lord Stannis. He paused. Lord Stannis has been investigating this for months, hasn't he? He'll move immediately. That's the hope. Catelyn turned from the window. What about the household? How are people responding? The servants are frightened. They know something terrible has happened, but not the details. The guards are confused. They arrested the Queen and the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard on Lord Stark's orders, but no one has explained why. Luwin's chains clinked softly as he moved to his desk. You should make an announcement, my lady, before rumors spread and panic sets in. Ned will do it tonight. She stopped. After the executions tomorrow, the truth will be clear enough. Luwin's old eyes were sad. This will break the realm, you know, when word spreads that the king's heirs were bastards all along, that the Lannisters put their own blood on the throne through incest and deception. There will be war. There would have been war eventually, regardless. Catelyn's voice was firm. If Jon Arryn's death had gone unavenged, if Cersei's bastards had taken the throne, if the lie had continued until it couldn't be sustained any longer, at least this way, we control when and how the truth comes out. At least this way, justice is served. I hope you're right, my lady. Luwin hesitated. The Lannister children. What will happen to them? Robert hasn't decided. Ned is arguing for mercy, taking them as wards, raising them here in the north or sending them to the faith, removed from power but alive. She met his gaze. What do you think should be done? I think they're children who had no choice in their parentage. Joffrey is cruel, but he's been raised to believe he's a prince destined to be king. Myrcella and Tommen are sweet-natured. None of them deserved this. Luwin sighed. But I'm a maester, not a king. I can offer counsel, not judgments. Robert will do what Robert does. Act from his heart rather than his head, and hope it works out. That's what worries me. Catelyn moved toward the door. Thank you, Maester, for the ravens, for your counsel, for not questioning me when I asked you to prepare messages in the middle of the night. I've served House Stark for 40 years, my lady. I've learned when to ask questions and when to simply trust. He gave a small bow. Whatever comes, Winterfell will endure. We always do. Catelyn found her children in the great hall taking their midday meal. Robb sat at the high table with Theon Greyjoy, both of them speaking in low voices. Sansa was with Jane Poole and Beth Castle, their usual chatter subdued. Arya sat alone near the end of a table, pushing food around her plate. Bran and Rickon were with old Nan, the younger boys mercifully distracted by one of her rambling stories. All of them looked up when Catelyn entered. All of them had questions in their eyes. "Mother," Robb said, standing. "What's happening? The whole castle is talking about the Queen being arrested, about Sir Jaime in the dungeons. Is it true?" Catelyn glanced around the hall. Too many ears, too many servants and guards who would spread whatever she said. "Come with me," she said. "All of you. To the Solar. Now." They followed without argument. Even Arya, who usually resisted being herded anywhere. Catelyn led them through the castle to Ned's Solar and closed the door firmly behind them. "Sit," she said. Robb, Sansa, Arya, and Bran sat. Rickon climbed into Catelyn's lap when she took her own chair. She held him close and looked at her other children, her wolf pups, who were about to learn that the world was far more dangerous and ugly than they'd understood. "What I'm about to tell you must not be repeated outside this room," Catelyn began. "Do you understand? Not to your friends, not to the servants, not to anyone. This is family business, and it stays within the family." "We understand," Robb said. The others nodded. Catelyn took a breath. "Yesterday, while your father was hunting with the king, I discovered something. I saw Queen Cersei and Sir Jaime Lannister together in the first keep. They were—" She paused, choosing words carefully for the younger children's sake. "They were committing a terrible sin. Incest. Brother and sister together, breaking both the laws of gods and men." Sansa's hand flew to her mouth. That's not possible. The Queen wouldn't. "And when your father told King Robert, both Cersei and Jaime confessed." Catelyn's voice was steady, despite the horror of what she was relating. "They also confessed that the royal children, Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen, are not Robert's. They're Jaime's bastards, born of incest." The Solar was silent except for Rickon's soft breathing. The older children stared at her in shock. "Prince Joffrey is a bastard?" Sansa whispered. But we were supposed to. Father was talking about a betrothal." "Joffrey has no claim to anything now. He's a bastard, and worse, he's the product of the most vile transgression imaginable." Catelyn kept her voice gentle, despite the harshness of the truth. "I know this is difficult to hear. I know it's frightening, but you needed to know before tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Robb's voice was sharp. "What happens tomorrow? Cersei and Jaime will die for their crimes. Your father will carry out the sentences." She looked at Robb. "You're nearly a man grown. You'll be expected to witness, to understand what justice looks like when treason is committed." Robb's face had gone pale. "Father has to kill them. He's Warden of the North. It's his duty." Catelyn shifted Rickon in her lap. "Sansa, Arya, you will not attend. You're too young to see such things. Bran, Rickon, you'll stay in the nursery with old man. This is not something children should witness." "But Robb has to watch?" Arya's voice was indignant. "That's not fair. Robb is the heir to Winterfell. He needs to understand that lordship means making hard choices and seeing them through." Catelyn met Arya's fierce gaze. "When you're older, you'll understand. For now, trust that I'm protecting you from something you don't need to see." "What about the prince? I mean, Joffrey," Sansa asked. Her voice was small. "What will happen to him and his brother and sister? Robert hasn't decided. They're children, innocent of their parents' crimes. Ned is arguing they should be taken as wards, raised away from King's Landing, but allowed to live." Catelyn paused. "But Sansa, you need to understand that Joffrey is not who you thought he was. He's not a prince, he's not noble-born in the way you imagined, and even before this, he was cruel. I've seen it. You would not have been happy married to him." Sansa's eyes filled with tears. I thought he was like in the songs, a golden prince who would—" She stopped, wiping her eyes. I was stupid. You were young. You believed what you were taught to believe, that princes are noble and knights are honorable, and the world is fair. Catelyn's voice was gentle. Now you're learning what I learned as a girl, that the world is complicated and dangerous, and the only people you can truly trust are family. Family, duty, honor. Robb said quietly, reciting House Tully's words. Yes, in that order. Always in that order. Catelyn looked at each of her children. We're going to be all right. The Lannisters may be powerful, but we have allies. The Riverlands through my father, the Stormlands through Robert, the Vale through your Aunt Lysa. We did the right thing exposing the truth. Now we have to be strong enough to face what comes next. Bran had been quiet throughout. Now he spoke, his voice uncertain. Mother? Is this my fault? Because you told me not to climb yesterday. You kept me close all day. Were you worried I'd see what you saw? That the Lannisters would hurt me? Too observant? Catelyn pulled him close with her free arm, sandwiching him against her side with Rickon on her lap. I was worried, she admitted. The Lannisters are dangerous people who have already killed to protect their secret. I didn't want you anywhere near them. But you didn't do anything wrong, Bran. You listened to me and stayed safe. That's all I needed. But if I had climbed, if I had seen them instead, then they might have hurt you to keep you quiet. They might have pushed you from the tower, or done something even worse. She gripped him tightly. But you didn't climb. You stayed safe. And that's why you're here now, whole and well, instead of... She stopped before she could finish the thought. Instead of broken and comatose. Instead of falling to his death. Instead of triggering a cascade of events that would have left Catelyn paralyzed with grief while the realm burned around her. Can we see Ghost? Bran asked. And the other wolves. I just want to be with them for a while. Of course. Catelyn released him. All of you. Go to the kennels. Spend time with your direwolves. Be together. Be pack. We'll talk more later if you need to. They filed out, Robb with his hand on Bran's shoulder, Sansa with her eyes still red, Arya walking close to her sister for once instead of running ahead. Catelyn watched them go and thought, they're stronger than they know. They'll survive this. We all will. But the thought felt like a prayer rather than a certainty. Ned found her an hour later in the godswood. She was sitting before the heart tree again, though she still kept the 7 and this place belonged to the old gods. But the godswood had become her refuge these past 2 days, the only place where she could think without being watched, without having to perform the role of strong, certain Lady of Winterfell. Cat, Ned sat beside her on the stone bench. I saw the children. They told me you'd explained everything. They needed to know. Before tomorrow. Before the whole castle sees their father execute the queen and the kingslayer. She leaned against him. How are you? Sick to my stomach. Ned's voice was raw. I've executed men before. Deserters from the Night's Watch. Oathbreakers. Men who committed crimes that demanded justice. But never someone I knew. Someone I grew up with. Jaime is not your friend, Ned. He never was. I know, but I remember him at 16. Cocky and golden and so damned proud of his white cloak, the youngest Kingsguard in history. And now, he shook his head. Now I have to take his head for betraying everything that cloak meant. He betrayed it the moment he killed Aerys, the moment he chose to break his vows and fuck his sister. The moment he let Cersei put bastards in the succession and threaten the stability of the entire realm. Catelyn took his hand. You're not executing the boy you remember. You're executing the man who committed treason. There's a difference. Is there? There has to be. Or how do we live with what we have to do? She turned to face him. Ned, listen to me. You are the most honorable man I know. You keep your oaths even when it costs you. You tell the truth even when a lie would serve you better. You do your duty no matter how much it hurts. That's who you are. That's what makes you worthy of trust. But honor without wisdom gets good men killed. Jon Arryn was honorable. He investigated the truth, and someone poisoned him for it. You're honorable too. And if you discovered this secret in King's Landing, surrounded by Lannisters and their allies, you would have done the honorable thing. You would have warned Cersei, given her a chance to flee, and she would have killed you for it. Ned was quiet. You're right. I would have warned her. It's what honor demands. No, it's what your version of honor demands. But there are other kinds of honor, Ned. The honor that protects your family. The honor that serves justice without being stupid about it. The honor that recognizes when mercy is weakness and when strength is necessary. She gripped his hand tighter. Tomorrow, when you take their heads, you'll be serving all of those kinds of honor at once. Remember that. I'll try. He pulled her close. They sat together in the silence of the godswood, while the heart tree watched with its weeping red eyes. Robert wants to keep the children, Ned said finally. Take them as wards. He won't kill them, but he won't let them go free either. He's planning to legitimize them under new names, probably Waters, the bastard name for the Crown lands, and raise them away from court. Joffrey will go to the Citadel or the Faith. Myrcella and Tommen will be fostered with loyal houses. That's more mercy than I expected from him. He remembers Rhaegar's children, what was done to them, what he approved of. Ned's voice was heavy. He told me this morning that he's had nightmares about those babies for 15 years, that he sees them sometimes when he drinks. He doesn't want more children's blood on his hands, even if they're Lannister blood. The realm will question it, call him weak for not executing them. Let them question. Robert is king. His word is law. And this way, Ned paused. This way we can tell ourselves we did the right thing. We punished the guilty and spared the innocent. That has to mean something. It does. Catelyn hoped she sounded more certain than she felt. The execution was set for dawn. Catelyn woke in the darkness of their bedchamber to find Ned already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed with his head in his hands. Ned? I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see... He stopped. I see Jaime at 16, grinning after he'd beaten me in the yard. I see Cersei on her wedding day, beautiful and cold, marrying Robert because her father commanded it, and I have to kill them both in a few hours. Catelyn sat up and wrapped her arms around him from behind. You're doing what has to be done, what justice demands, what Robert has ordered, and the law requires. I know, but knowing doesn't make it easier. They dressed in silence. Ned put on his finest clothes. This was a formal execution, not a battlefield killing. He would represent the king's justice and the authority of House Stark. He had to look the part. Catelyn dressed simply but with care. She would be present as witness and as Lady of Winterfell. The household needed to see her standing strong beside her husband. They descended to the yard as the first gray light touched the eastern sky. The castle had gathered. Not everyone, but more than Catelyn had expected. The household guard formed a cordon around the space where the block waited. Servants clustered at windows and on walls, watching from a distance. Robb stood with Theon near the front, his young face pale but determined. Robert was there, seated in a chair that had been brought from the great hall. He looked terrible, his eyes red, his face puffy, his hands shaking slightly. But he was present. The king would witness justice done in his name. The Lannister children were not present. Catelyn had made sure of that. Whatever Robert decided for their futures, they didn't need to watch their parents die. Jaime was brought out first. He walked with his hands chained behind his back, still in his white Kingsguard cloak despite having broken every vow it represented. His golden hair was tangled, his face drawn, but he held his head high. When he saw the block, he didn't flinch. Ned stood beside the block with ice unsheathed. The Valyrian steel blade gleamed even in the weak dawn light. Jaime Lannister, Ned's voice carried across the yard. You have confessed to breaking your Kingsguard vows, to adultery with the queen, to incest, to putting bastards in the line of succession through deception. King Robert Baratheon has sentenced you to death. Do you have any final words? Jaime looked at Robert. I regret nothing. I loved Cersei. I would do it all again. Then you die a traitor and a fool, Robert said. His voice was thick with drink and grief. Proceed. Jaime knelt before the block. He laid his head down without being forced, without pleading. Whatever else he was, he faced death with courage. Ned raised ice. In the name of Robert of House Baratheon, first of his name, King of the Andals and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms and Protector of the Realm, I, Eddard of House Stark, Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North, do sentence you to die. Quick, merciful in its swiftness, Jaime Lannister's head rolled free, his body slumped against the block. Blood pooled on the stone. Catelyn watched without flinching. She had seen death before, had held her father's hand as he died, had birthed children who lived and one who hadn't. Death was part of life in Westeros. This death was justice. She would not look away from it. Cersei was brought out next. The queen had none of Jaime's composure. She fought against the guards holding her, screaming curses and threats. Her golden hair was wild, her face twisted with rage and grief. "You'll all die for this," she shrieked. "My father will burn your castles and hang your children, and—" She saw Jaime's body, saw his head. The words died in her throat. "No," she whispered. "No. Jaime. Jaime." She lunged toward his body. The guards held her back. She collapsed against them, sobbing, all her fury draining away into grief. "Cersei of House Lannister," Ned said. His voice was gentler now, but no less firm. "You have confessed to adultery, to incest, to treason, to the murder of Jon Arryn, Hand of the King. You have been sentenced to death by King Robert Baratheon. Do you have final words?" "Damn you," Cersei said. She was still staring at Jaime's body. "Damn you all. I hope my children—" She stopped, looked at Robert. Please don't hurt my children. They're innocent. They didn't know. Please." "They'll live," Robert said. His voice was hoarse. "I won't kill children, Cersei. Not even yours. Not even his. They'll be taken as wards, raised away from court. They won't have crowns, but they'll have lives. That's more mercy than you deserve. Thank you." The words came out broken. "Thank you." She laid her head on the block beside where Jaime's blood still pooled, and closed her eyes. "In the name of Robert of House Baratheon, first of his name, King of the Andals and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms and Protector of the Realm, I, Eddard of House Stark, Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North, do sentence you to die." Ice fell again. Cersei's head separated from her body with the same clean efficiency. The queen was dead. The Kingslayer was dead. The secret that had threatened the realm was exposed and punished. Catelyn looked at Ned. He stood with ice still in his hands, blood dripping from the blade, his face gray. He had done what needed to be done, what honor and duty demanded. But the cost was written in every line of his face. Robert stood. He swayed slightly, drunk or exhausted, or both. "It's done. The traitors are dead. Justice is served." He looked at the assembled household. "Let word spread throughout the realm. This is what happens to those who betray their king. This is what happens to those who put bastards in the line of succession through lies and incest. House Lannister committed treason. House Lannister has paid the price." He turned and walked back toward the castle, his shoulders hunched, looking more like a broken old man than a king. The yard began to clear. Servants came to remove the bodies. Robb approached Ned, his face pale. "Father?" "Not now, Robb." Ned's voice was rough. "Go inside. Be with your siblings. I'll speak with you later." Catelyn stayed. She took ice from Ned's hands and set it aside, then pulled him close. He buried his face against her shoulder, and she felt him shaking. "It's done," she whispered. "It's over. You did what had to be done." "I know, but knowing doesn't make it feel any better." They stood together in the yard while the sun rose over Winterfell, and the blood of the Kingslayer and the Queen soaked into the stones. The ravens came 3 days later. Catelyn stood in the rookery with Maester Luwin, reading the messages as he untied them from the birds' legs. From River Run, her father Hoster Tully, "I stand with House Stark. The Riverland's banners are called. We march to support our allies. From the Eyrie, her sister Lysa, Jon Arryn is avenged. The Vale remembers. We stand with you." From Dragonstone, Stannis Baratheon, "I have suspected the truth for months. Now it is proven. I acknowledge Robert as king, and his sentence is just. The Lannister children are bastards, with no claim. I am Robert's heir until he remarries, and sires legitimate children. 3 of the most powerful regions in Westeros, united behind Robert. United against whatever response Tywin Lannister might make." "Any word from Casterly Rock?" Catelyn asked. "Not yet, but we will soon." Luwin's voice was troubled. "Tywin Lannister does not forgive insults to his family when he learns his twins are dead and his grandchildren have been declared bastards. And he decides whether to accept it or to fight." Catelyn folded the messages carefully. How long until he could march? To gather his full strength? A month, perhaps 2. The Westerlands are vast, and his bannermen are spread throughout. Luwin paused. But he has standing forces at Casterly Rock. He could send a smaller army much sooner. Which would accomplish what? Even Tywin isn't foolish enough to attack the north with only part of his strength. And every day he delays gives our allies more time to gather their own forces. Catelyn moved to the window. Below, life in Winterfell was returning to normal. The bloodstains in the yard had been scrubbed away. The executions were 3 days past. The household was adjusting to the new reality. "There's another message," Lewin said quietly. "From King's Landing. From Grand Maester Pycelle." "What does it say?" "That the capital is in chaos. That news of the Queen's execution has spread through the city like wildfire. That people are shocked, terrified, uncertain what comes next." Lewin handed her the message. "Pycelle is asking for guidance. Robert left the city in the hands of the small council, but without a hand, and with the Queen dead, no one knows who has authority. Robert needs to return to King's Landing. Soon, he needs to show the realm he's still in control, still capable of governing." Catelyn read Pycelle's message. The Grand Maester's words were carefully neutral, but the subtext was clear. "Come back before someone else decides to claim power in the vacuum you left." She found Robert in the Great Hall, drinking with Ned and several northern lords. The king was telling stories about the execution, embellishing details, making himself the hero of a story where he'd been more victim than victor. "Your Grace," Catelyn said. "A word?" Robert looked up, his face flushed. "Lady Catelyn, come, sit. Have some wine. We're celebrating the death of traitors and the restoration of Your Grace." "Privately, please." Something in her tone cut through Robert's drunkenness. He stood and followed her to a quiet corner of the hall. "What is it?" "The city needs you." She handed him Pycelle's message. "You need to return, soon, before someone decides to take advantage of the instability. Can't I have even a fortnight of peace? I just executed my wife. I discovered my children were bastards. I learned I've been made a fool for 15 years. Don't I deserve a moment to drink and grieve and—" "You deserve whatever you want, but you're a king, and kings don't get to grieve on their own schedule." Catelyn's voice was gentle, but firm. "The realm needs you, Robert. It needs to see you strong and in control. It needs to know that the Baratheon dynasty continues despite the Lannister treachery." "The Baratheon dynasty." Robert laughed bitterly. "I have no heirs, Cat. No legitimate children. Stannis is my heir now, and he's as warm and charming as a frozen stone. What kind of dynasty is that? You're only 35. You have time." She paused. "The Tyrells have been seeking a royal marriage for years. Marjorie Tyrell is young, beautiful, well-raised. An alliance with the Reach would secure the largest army in Westeros. You've thought about this." "I've thought about everything. It's what I do." She met his eyes. "You made me part of this when you believed my accusation. Now let me help you finish it. Go back to King's Landing. Restore order. Remarry, secure the succession. Show the realm that House Baratheon is still strong despite what the Lannisters did." Robert was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "You're right. You're always right. Ned's lucky to have you." "Ned knows." She smiled slightly. "When will you leave?" "Tomorrow. The day after. Soon." Robert rubbed his face. "Will you come south?" "Ned's still my hand. I need him in the capital." Catelyn thought of King's Landing, the viper's nest of politics and intrigue, the place where Jon Arryn had died and where Ned's honor would be tested daily. Every instinct screamed to keep her family in the north, far from southern schemes. But Ned needed her. If he was going to survive as Hand, if he was going to navigate the treacherous waters of court politics, he needed someone who could see the traps before he walked into them. "We'll come," she said. "But I'm bringing the children. All of them. I won't be separated from my family while the realm is unstable." "Agreed. Bring them all. Winterfell will endure without you for a season." Robert clapped her on the shoulder. "Thank you, Cat, for everything, for seeing the truth, for speaking it, for helping me survive what came after. I won't forget it." He returned to his drinking. Catelyn stood in the shadows of the great hall and thought, "We did it. We survived, we exposed the truth, and lived to see justice done. Now we just have to survive everything that comes next." 2 weeks later, a massive column departed Winterfell. King Robert rode at the front with Ned beside him. Behind them came the Stark family, Catelyn and the children in a wheelhouse, Robb on horseback with the older boys, the household guard. Servants, 300 people heading south on the King's Road. And in the middle of the column, heavily guarded and traveling in separate wagons, were 3 golden-haired children who had been princes and princesses a month ago and were now simply bastards with uncertain futures. Joffrey traveled in sullen silence. Myrcella cried quietly. Tommen asked repeatedly when he could see his mother, and no one had the heart to tell him she was dead. Catelyn watched the children from her wheelhouse and felt a complicated mix of pity and relief. Pity because they were innocent victims of their parents' crimes, relief because they were alive and relatively safe instead of dead or imprisoned. Mother? Sansa sat beside her, looking out the window at the passing landscape. What will happen to them? To Joffrey and his siblings? Robert will decide. Probably send them to different houses as wards, give them new names, new lives. They'll never be royalty, but they'll be alive and cared for. Catelyn took Sansa's hand. Does that bother you? After you thought you might marry Joffrey? No. Sansa's voice was firm. I was wrong about him, about what I wanted. I thought I wanted songs and romance and a handsome prince. But I want— She paused. I want to be strong like you. I want to protect my family and see the truth instead of just believing what people tell me. Catelyn pulled her daughter close. You're already stronger than you know, and you'll get stronger still. We all will. We have to be. Arya leaned forward from her seat across the wheelhouse. Are we really going to King's Landing? To the capital? Yes. Will there be a war? People keep saying Lord Tywin will march, that the Lannisters will want revenge. Perhaps. But if there is a war, we'll face it together. As family, as pack. Catelyn looked at all her children, Sansa, Arya, Bran, Rickon all in the wheelhouse, Robb riding outside with the men. The Lannisters made their choice when they committed treason. Now they'll face the consequences. And we'll be ready. The column continued south through the winter snows. Behind them, Winterfell stood gray and eternal, waiting for their return. Ahead lay King's Landing, the Iron Throne, and whatever challenges Robert's reign would face now that the lie at its foundation had been exposed. But Catelyn felt no fear, only certainty. She had seen the truth and spoken it. She had protected her children and served justice. She had helped execute traitors and saved innocent children from the same fate. She had played the game and won. Family, duty, honor, in that order. Always in that order. And as long as Catelyn Stark remembered that hierarchy, as long as she put her children first, and used her mind instead of relying on honor alone, House Stark would survive whatever came next. The wheelhouse rolled south through the snow. Winter was coming, but the Starks were ready. Epilogue. 6 months later, the Raven from Casterly Rock arrived on a gray morning. Ned opened it in the small council chamber with Robert and Stannis. He read it twice, then handed it to the king without a word. Robert scanned the message and laughed, a sound of genuine surprise and relief. Tywin's not marching, Robert said. The old lion is accepting it. All of it. The executions, the bastard children, the whole damned thing. What? Stannis leaned forward. That makes no sense. Tywin Lannister doesn't forgive insults to his family. He sacked King's Landing because Aerys opened the gates to Tywin's enemies. He wiped out houses Jaime and Tarbeck for defying his authority. Why would he accept his twins' executions? Because he's pragmatic. Ned's voice was thoughtful. He knows he can't win. The North, Riverlands, Stormlands, Vale, and likely the Reach are all united against him. Dorne would join the moment war started just for the chance to hurt the Lannisters. He's isolated, and Tywin doesn't fight battles he can't win. There's more, Robert said, still reading. He's disowning them, publicly. Says Jaime and Cersei acted alone, without House Lannister's knowledge or approval. He's denouncing their actions as the crimes of individuals, not his house. And he's offering— Robert stopped, blinked. He's offering reparations, gold to the crown, support for my reign, a formal apology for the shame his children brought to the realm. He's saving himself, Stannis said flatly. Cutting off the diseased limbs to save the body, Tywin survives. House Lannister survives. That's all he cares about. As long as he's not marching on us, I don't care what he tells himself to sleep at night. No war means no bloodshed. It means we can focus on actually governing instead of fighting. You're willing to accept his apology after everything Cersei and Jaime did? I'm willing to accept peace. I'm willing to let the guilty be punished, and the rest move forward. Robert set the letter down. Cat was right. She told me the realm would unite against Tywin if he marched. That he was isolated. She told me to be patient and let the political reality sink in. And she was right. The woman's a better strategist than half my council. Where is Lady Catelyn? Stannis asked. With the children, she takes them to the godswood most afternoons. Though why she visits the old gods when she keeps the 7 is beyond me. Robert stood. I should tell her. She deserves to know that her strategy worked, that we have peace instead of war. He left the small council chamber. Ned and Stannis sat in silence for a moment. Your wife is formidable, Stannis said. It was not quite a compliment, but not quite criticism either. She is. She sees the game more clearly than I ever could. Ned paused. If she hadn't discovered the twins that day, if she hadn't told me, if we'd gone south with the secret still hidden, then Cersei's bastard would have taken the throne eventually. The lie would have continued until it couldn't be sustained. War would have come anyway, but later, when we were less prepared, Stannis's voice was certain. Your wife saved the realm, Lord Stark. I hope you've told her that. I have. Many times. Good. Some women need to hear such things. Others simply know. Stannis gathered his papers. I'm returning to Dragonstone tomorrow. There are matters that need my attention, but Robert knows he can summon me if the Lannisters prove false. They won't. Tywin is many things, but he's not stupid. Ned stood. Thank you, Lord Stannis, for supporting us, for standing with the truth when it would have been easier to stay silent. I didn't do it for you. I did it because the law demanded it, because bastards have no claim to thrones, no matter whose bastards they are. Stannis's face was hard, but you're welcome regardless. Catelyn sat in the godswood of the Red Keep, smaller than Winterfell's, more ornamental than sacred, but still a place of peace. Her children were with her. Sansa reading to Myrcella Lannister, or Myrcella Waters as she was now called, legitimized under the bastard name for the Crown Lands. Arya practicing sword forms with Bran, both of them using wooden blades. Rickon playing with a toy horse while Tom and Waters watched shyly from a few feet away. Joffrey was not with them. Joffrey Waters had been sent to the Citadel in Old Town to train as a maester. Far from court, far from power, far from the temptation to reclaim what he thought was his by right, Robert appeared at the Godswood gate. He smiled when he saw the children, his new family cobbled together from tragedy and mercy and political necessity. Lady Catelyn, Robert said. May I? Of course, Your Grace. He sat beside her on the stone bench. Tywin's not marching, he's accepted it all, apologized publicly, offered reparations. We have peace. Catelyn felt something in her chest relax. Thank the gods. Thank you, you mean. You called it. You told me Tywin would bend rather than break once he saw the odds against him. You were right. Robert watched the children play. I'm marrying Marjorie Tyrell next month. The Reach alliance is secured. Stannis is my acknowledged heir until I sire new legitimate children. The realm is stable. All because you saw two people committing incest in an abandoned tower and had the courage to report it. I did what any mother would do. I protected my children. You did more than that. But I'll take the modesty. Robert stood. There's one more thing. I'm appointing you to the small council as an advisor on northern affairs and, he smiled, as someone who can tell me when I'm about to do something stupid. Gods know I need that. Your Grace, I'm honored, but I'm not. Women don't sit on the small council. This woman does. You've earned it 10 times over. And frankly, if I'd listened to a woman like you 15 years ago instead of marrying Cersei, none of this would have happened. Robert's voice was firm. Say yes, Cat. Help me govern. Help me be the king I should have been all along. She looked at her children, at Ned walking through the Godswood gate to join them, at the future she had fought so hard to secure. Yes, Catelyn said, I'll serve. As advisor, strategist, and the woman who had saved the realm by seeing what others had missed and having the courage to speak the truth. The Starks survived. The realm endured. And Catelyn Stark, who had valued family above all else, ensured that her pack remained whole and safe. Family, duty, honor. In that order. Always. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.